Hello, good morning, and welcome to the Celebration Space. My name is Kaylee Phelps, and today we are talking about finding common ground after moving. So this conversation or this topic idea started because I wanted to do a video with Tyler about when he and I moved in together and about what that looked like and about what that felt like and about how we found, for lack of a better term, common ground, figuring out how to live in this space together, especially as we were navigating, bringing all of our stuff in here together and into a new space, figuring out where we wanted to put things, how we wanted to organize them, all of that good stuff. So it started out as a conversation that I wanted to have with him. He's always at the gym at 10:30 during my live shows, so this became more of a topic that I'm going to talk about, and I'll do a part 2 with him just so that you can get both sides of the story. But I also wanted to talk about it because I know a lot of people are moving in with their parents or moving in with their partners, or maybe moving in with a friend right now as there's some economic uncertainty and a lot going on with the global health crisis. So I want to talk about some things that throughout the years have really helped me in finding common ground with, my partner or a roommate or someone else, and setting up boundaries and, some ground rules and ways to get organized to facilitate some success in that. So I wanted to, I think that really, it kind of breaks down to a couple of different sections. So I'm going to talk about outside sources, money, and organization. So the third one kind of sounds most up my alley, but I wanted to talk about the other two because I think they're equally as important. The first one, outside sources, I think is pretty easy just to have a conversation around and set boundaries around, as long as you're on the same page and you're really honest about yourself and what you need. So the first thing, of course, is how are you going to handle going out in public with coronavirus? Tyler right now is still going to the gym, but he's being very safe. He always puts on hand sanitizer as he comes in, washes his hands. We just kind of have some ground rules around that and making sure that we both are being really careful around how we're handling that, and also around guests. So if you're moving in with your parents or with a friend, you might normally have different kind of guest rules about common spaces or how you have people over. Maybe it's just a quick text, hey, someone's coming over tonight, or maybe it's just you don't even have to notify them. I always let my roommates know ahead of time and text them that if I was having someone over, and I think that's a courtesy, but whatever works best for you in this time of coronavirus. How are you going to handle guests, and how are you going to handle public outings? If your roommate is going out to bars and partying and doing all these things and coming home, how are you going to feel safe in your own space and find that common ground in the space that you share and honor each other's boundaries and what each other is doing? So those were the two main things I wanted to talk about outside sources, coronavirus, and guests and social interactions outside of the home right now. Normally they wouldn't be as big of a deal, but of course we're not living in normal times. So next is just talking about some money things to get organized. If you're moving in with someone else who already owns a home, a lot of these things will be a little easier to facilitate, more just like determining how much you're gonna pay them and how, whether that's Venmo or a check or whatever you want that to look like. But if you're moving into a new space together, figuring out who is going to open up which accounts, internet, electricity, gas, maybe water, maybe, and then who's going to be the primary leaseholder and is going to be the primary person that is paying money to your complex or, to your landlord, and then going from there about how you're going to split up those payments. Also, if you're going to be buying any furniture together, just figuring out how you want to put that together, and if it's just a roommate situation, figuring out how you might split that up down the road and what that would look like. And then how you're gonna split up some essentials that are shared. So some of the things that can look like is if you have one bathroom in your apartment, like who's buying toilet paper and hand soap and dish soap and some of those essentials that you're both going to be using a lot of, and how are you gonna split that up? Is it someone primarily buys it and then the other person just sends a Venmo request, or how are you gonna split that up? So really just getting clear about some of the things that are big, making sure you have internet, or some of the things that are small, who's gonna pick up the toilet paper and how are you gonna split that up? And, just being really conscious and open about how you're feeling about it in little things I can't tell you how many little things like toilet paper can go from a small issue to a giant one if you don't set up your boundaries and expectations ahead of time, and if you don't voice concerns when they start to arise. So just keeping in mind, if you're already down the line and something's starting to bother you, figuring out how you can bring it up in a really productive way is the best way to go about things. So then some organization things. So cleaning schedule and duties. So some people like to clean, some people like to stress clean and have been doing that a lot this week, myself included, and some people just don't. And people have different, I talked about in my video of why getting organized is important. I talked about it in clean versus organized video earlier this week or last week. But basically everyone has their own definition of what clean and organized are. So you might not even realize that your definition is very different than what a lot of other people's definition is. So it could be to you that as long as dishes are in the sink, they're organized. It could be to someone else that if dishes aren't in either hand wash, some people like to hand wash only, some people like to dishwasher only, really having these conversations around like, hey, some of these little things as far as a cleaning schedule and cleaning duties is really huge. And also what your pet peeves are. So pet peeves can be, for me, it has looked different in every space that I've lived in, from my apartments in Chicago to my apartments in Atlanta. Here in this current apartment, there's a really small entryway. I mean, you can hardly call it an entryway. And so if we end up leaving shoes and they're not tucked into the little coat closet, they become a tripping hazard. And also now that we have a naughty kitten, she'll play with them and make a ton of noise and mess with stuff. So shoes by the door become a big, kind of trigger point or something where I'm like, hey, can we just tuck our shoes away? They don't have to go up on the rack, just inside the door. And Tyler has his own things that he'll bring up to me, and we've come up with a system of we both know what our pet peeves are and we both know how to handle it. He wants to make sure that when his stuff is set somewhere, I will normally, we joke that it's the brotherhood of the traveling glasses, because he has a couple sets of eyeglasses and he'll leave them around the house. So something that's actually really helpful for him is if I find his glasses, I just move them back to one landing spot. So he always knows if he can't find his glasses, normally they're there, and if they aren't there, then I haven't seen them yet. So things like that and systems in place just to know where landing spaces are. I've talked a lot about mail or where things can get cluttered. Maybe it's your dining room table, maybe it's your kitchen counter. Figuring out what a landing space is, and if you have a roommate or you have someone that you're living with, making sure that their space and their items are honored. And if you have something that's in the main space and you kind of have a rule like, let's tidy up before we go to bed and take anything out of the main space that we don't want to have there, overnight, where do you put that so that you're not just like putting it on the floor outside their bedroom, unless that's something that's okay with them? Just trying to figure out those boundaries and how to figure out landing spaces and designated spaces if you're living with a partner. We just set up, if you saw my home office hacks video on, I think that was Wednesday, we just set up kind of like a little home office for Tyler in our guest closet, because he had a lot of books that he had brought home and a lot of things, and they were just in boxes, and those pieces really weren't being honored. They weren't on display. They were just kind of like, put away. And so we decided to go get a bookshelf one random day from Home Goods, put it together, got it all set up and organized, and then ended up creating a standing desk for him. And it was all the same stuff that was in that closet, except for now it's more of a space where he can go and he can work and he can record things like, I don't want to be a spoiler alert, but both of us are thinking about starting podcasts, so we're figuring out how to make that space somewhere where we can both get a lot of work done and be really productive. So landing space is a huge thing, figuring out where you can honor things. Pets, how you're going to split up pet responsibilities is someone, also a big thing for us is that we got this kitten and she eats a lot faster. So I would feed Dolly and Millie thinking that they were starving, and then just to find out that Tyler had just fed them before I woke up, and so they were getting, doubling down on some food, which great for them. They were kind of gaming the mom and dad system. But it's something that just being really communicative about, like, hey, this is a schedule that we're going to put our pets on. This is who's going to be doing what, who's going to be really navigating those things. So there's going to be different dynamics in different spaces. Like I said, this is something I started out as an idea of talking about me and Tyler and how when we moved in together, what this really looks like. But going from there, it can really be something that is important to talk to your parents if you're moving in with your parents during this time, figuring out how you can really contribute. If it's not financially, maybe it's, you're taking on more of the responsibilities, cleaning or, running errands, or making sure that you're really conscious about their boundaries around coronavirus and how you have people over, who you have over, and really being communicative around that. Moving in with a friend, maybe you are like, hey, I just want to let you know I'm going to be traveling. Like, how can I make sure that you feel comfortable as I'm traveling or as I'm seeing other people? So starting these conversations early and often to find that common ground with the people that we live with. I mean, I think the people we lived with are the people that we love, whether it's a friend or a loved one or a partner, but also making sure those can be the most volatile relationships because you're always in the same space, especially during this time of coronavirus. So that is what I have for you. I hope this might be helpful if you're moving in with someone, just to outline 3 topics to really talk about as far as outside sources, the money dynamic, and then also how you organize things. I think getting set up with decor and doing different things with your furniture and everything is something I always recommend. Start with what you have, sell what you don't want, and then also go from there figuring things out. But especially during this time of economic uncertainty, just starting with what you have and trying to find common ground on that should get things started for you, and then bringing in things from there and figuring out the money dynamic, as I mentioned. So hopefully this is helpful. If you have any topics of conversation that have really helped you as you've moved in with a roommate or with someone else, please drop them below. I'd love to hear from you. And until next time, enjoy celebrating today.